You've probably heard a lot of horror stories, but what if I told you that tonight I'm going to share with you 3 true stories so terrifying, they'll make you question everything you thought you knew about fear? These are not just stories, these are things that actually happened to real people. Things that happened to me. Grab a blanket because you're going to need it. The Whispering Shadows. I remember the night I moved into my new apartment. It was a small place just big enough for me, and it was in a quiet area with not much happening. I had just gotten a job in the city, and this apartment was perfect for me because it was cheap. It was old, though, and the walls creaked like they were telling secrets. The first night I slept there, everything was normal. I put my things away, set up my bed, and turned off the lights to get some sleep. But as I closed my eyes, I felt a little weird. It was so quiet. Not the nice kind of quiet, but the kind that makes your ears ring. I tossed and turned trying to sleep, but then I heard it. At first, it was so quiet I wasn't sure if I heard it at all. It sounded like a voice, whispering. The voice was soft and low, like someone was talking to me from far away. I thought maybe it was just the wind outside or my imagination. But then I heard it again. Essie. I opened my eyes and looked around the room. My bedroom was dark, except for a little bit of moonlight that came through the window. I couldn't see anything that looked strange. The room was empty. Still, I had this feeling that something wasn't right. I lay there trying to ignore it, but I couldn't fall asleep. I kept hearing whispers like soft voices talking in the corner of the room. I tried to convince myself it was nothing. Maybe the building was old and the sounds came from the wind or the pipes. But the whispers kept getting louder. I sat up in bed. My heart started to race. It was coming from the corner of the room near the window. I didn't want to look. I didn't want to see whatever it was that was making that sound, but my body wouldn't listen to me. Slowly I turned my head to look. I was scared, but I couldn't stop myself. At first I didn't see anything. The room was still. Then I saw it. The shadows. They weren't just shadows. They were moving, twisting, and stretching like they were alive. The shadows on the wall were moving by themselves. I blinked and they were gone. I quickly turned away and pulled the blankets over my head. I thought maybe I was just dreaming. But when I opened my eyes again, everything was quiet. The shadows were gone and the whispers stopped. I felt silly for getting scared, but deep down I knew something wasn't right. That night I finally fell asleep. The next day I tried to forget about what happened. I went to work and came back to my apartment. I told myself it was just my imagination playing tricks on me. But then the whispers came again. The next night I was sitting on my couch watching TV. It was late and I was tired, but the moment I turned off the TV I heard it again. The whispers. They were softer this time, but they were definitely there. I froze. My heart began to beat faster. I felt like I wasn't alone in the room. It was the same sound I heard the night before, coming from the same corner of the room. My body felt cold, like a chill was running through the air. I stood up, but I couldn't move. I was too scared. I slowly walked toward the corner of the room, where the whispers had come from. The hairs on my arms stood up and I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. But when I reached the corner, there was nothing there. No person. No creature. Just an empty corner. I looked around the room and everything was still. Nothing had changed. The apartment felt normal. But the whispers, they didn't stop. It was like they were always there, just waiting for me to hear them. After a few days of this, I decided to talk to my landlord. I asked him if anyone had lived in my apartment before. I was hoping maybe someone else had heard the same things. Maybe they knew something I didn't. He looked at me strangely, like I was asking a silly question. But then he told me something that made my blood go cold. "You're the 3rd tenant this month," he said, his voice quiet. "The last 2 people. They left in the middle of the night." Without a word. My heart sank. Why had they left so suddenly? And why didn't they tell anyone why? I couldn't stop thinking about it. That night I didn't sleep at all. I sat up in bed listening to every little sound. The whispers came again, but this time they were louder. They felt closer, like someone was right next to me speaking in my ear. I didn't know what to do. I wanted to leave, but something kept me there. I needed answers. I tried to ignore the whispers and go to sleep, but I couldn't. It felt like I was being watched, like someone was right beside me, waiting. The whispers grew louder. I didn't know if I was going crazy or if something was really there. It was too much to handle. The next day I went to work early, hoping I would forget about it. But I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the shadows in my mind. I couldn't stop thinking about them. The next night, I decided I had to do something. I couldn't live like this anymore. I grabbed my phone and started searching the internet for answers. I read about people who lived in haunted houses. Some said they heard whispers. Others saw strange shadows moving. I felt sick to my stomach. Was I living in a haunted apartment? Was something evil watching me? The more I read, the more I felt scared. There were stories about people being followed by these dark shadows, never able to escape them. I decided I needed to leave. I couldn't stay in that apartment anymore. I started packing up my things, and as I was putting my clothes into boxes, I heard the whispers again. "Get out." The voice was clear this time. It wasn't a whisper. It was a command. It was louder than the whispers I'd heard before. My heart raced and I grabbed my things as fast as I could. I left that apartment without even looking back. I didn't want to hear another whisper. I didn't want to see another shadow. That night I stayed with a friend. I never went back to that apartment again. I couldn't explain what happened, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't alone in that place. Something had been watching me. And whatever it was, it didn't want me there. Even now, when the wind howls outside, I can still hear the whispers in my mind. Sometimes I feel like they're following me even though I've moved far away from that apartment. I don't know who or what they were, but I'm not going to wait around to find out. And if you ever feel like you're not alone in your room, just remember this story. Because sometimes the shadows aren't just shadows. They're waiting for you. The face in the window. I used to live in a small house near the forest. It was a nice place, quiet, peaceful, and far from the city noise. I liked being alone, and I enjoyed the sound of birds in the morning and the wind in the trees at night. The house had big windows. During the day, the sunlight came in, making everything bright and warm. But at night, the windows felt different. They became dark, like empty holes looking into the house. I didn't think much about it at first. But then, one night, something strange happened. The first night. It was late. I was sitting on the couch watching TV. I had a big window right next to the couch, facing the backyard. The backyard was just trees, tall, dark, and quiet. There was no one living nearby. I was watching a funny show when I felt something. You know that feeling when someone is looking at you? That cold, strange feeling on your skin? I felt that. I turned my head slowly toward the window. At first I saw nothing. Just darkness outside. The trees stood still and the moon was bright in the sky. But then I saw it. A face. It was outside looking in. The face was pale, too pale, like the skin of a dead person. The eyes were wide, staring right at me. It didn't blink. It didn't move. Just watched. I jumped up from the couch, my heart racing. My hands shook as I reached for my phone. But when I looked back at the window, the face was gone. I ran to the door, locked it, and closed all the curtains. I told myself it was just my imagination. Maybe I was tired. Maybe it was a shadow from the trees. But deep down I knew. Someone, or something, had been watching me. The second night. The next day I tried to forget about it. I went to work, came home, and told myself everything was fine. But when night came I felt nervous. I didn't sit near the window. I turned on all the lights. I kept my phone close. Around midnight I heard something. Tap, tap, tap. A soft sound like fingers tapping on glass. My stomach twisted. I didn't want to look, but I had to. I turned my head slowly toward the window. And there it was. The face. Closer this time. Its eyes were bigger now. Dark, empty, and staring. Its mouth was slightly open like it wanted to say something. But no sound came. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911, my fingers shaking. But as soon as I blinked, the face was gone. The window was empty again. When the police arrived, they checked the backyard. There were no footprints. Nothing to show that someone had been there. Maybe it was an animal, the officer said. But I knew the truth. Animals don't have human faces. The third night. I didn't sleep. I kept my lights on all night, my curtains shut tight. I was scared, but I told myself if I just ignored it, it would go away. But the next night, something worse happened. At exactly midnight, I woke up to a sound. Tap, tap, tap. Not at the window. At my bedroom door. I sat up, my heart pounding. Someone was inside the house. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight. Slowly, I got out of bed and walked toward the door. My hands shook as I reached for the handle. I held my breath and pulled it open. Nothing. The hallway was empty. The front door was still locked. The windows were closed. Then I heard something behind me. Breathing. Slow, quiet breathing. I turned my flashlight toward my bedroom window. And there it was. The face. Inside the room. It was pressed against the glass from the inside, staring at me with wide, empty eyes. I screamed and ran out of the room, my heart racing. I grabbed my keys and ran out of the house, not even stopping to put on my shoes. I jumped into my car, locked the doors, and drove away as fast as I could. The last night. I never went back to that house. I called my landlord the next day and told him I was moving out. "You saw it too, didn't you?" he said quietly. My blood went cold. What do you mean? I asked. He sighed. The last 2 people who lived there, they left in the middle of the night. They said they saw something in the windows. A face. But when they tried to leave, it got inside. I felt sick. Did they ever see who it was? I asked. The landlord was silent for a moment. Then he said, no one knows. But no matter where they went, it followed them. I hung up the phone and sat in my car, shaking. I didn't know what to do. Would it follow me? Would I see the face again? That night, I stayed at a friend's house. I didn't tell them why. I just said I needed a place to sleep. But at midnight, I woke up. A cold feeling filled the room. I turned my head toward the window. And there it was. The face. Still watching. Still waiting. The Whispering Man. I was 12 years old when I first heard about the Whispering Man. It was just a silly story kids told at school. They said if you heard a whisper at night but no one was there, you should never answer. If you did, the Whispering Man would come for you. I didn't believe it. It was just a story to scare little kids. But then, it happened to me. And I wish I had listened. The first night. It was a normal night. My parents had gone to bed and I was in my room playing on my tablet. The house was quiet, and the only sound was the wind outside. Then I heard it. A whisper. At first I thought it was my mom. Maybe she was calling me from the other room. But the voice was too soft, too strange. I froze. Hello? I whispered back. Silence. I felt a shiver run down my spine. Something didn't feel right. But after a few minutes, I told myself I had imagined it. I put my headphones on and went to sleep. The second night. The next night it happened again. This time I was sure. I had just turned off the lights and crawled into bed when I heard it. A whisper. But this time I could hear the words. Can you hear me? My heart stopped. It sounded like it was coming from inside my room. I sat up slowly, my hands gripping my blanket. I looked around, but the room was empty. The door was closed. The window was locked. I took a deep breath. Maybe I was just dreaming. But then I heard it again. I know you're awake. I grabbed my pillow and covered my ears. I squeezed my eyes shut, my heart pounding. I didn't answer. And after a few minutes, the whispering stopped. The third night. I told my best friend at school about the whispering. He laughed. You answered it? He asked, eyes wide. I nodded. Just once. His face turned serious. You never answer, he said. That's how it finds you. I felt cold all over. It's just a story, I said. He shook his head. That's what everyone says, until they hear it again. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. I didn't want to sleep. I kept my lights on. I turned my TV on for noise. But at exactly midnight, the TV turned off. The lights flickered. And then, a whisper. Why won't you talk to me? I felt like I couldn't breathe. It was closer this time. Right next to my ear. I didn't move. I didn't speak. Then, something cold brushed against my cheek. I jumped out of bed and ran to my parents' room. I shook my mom awake, tears in my eyes. There's someone in my room. I cried. She got up, turned on all the lights and checked everywhere. Under the bed. In the closet. The window was still locked. There's nothing here, sweetie, she said. You just had a bad dream. But I knew the truth. It wasn't a dream. The fourth night. I begged my mom to let me sleep in her room, but she said I was too old for that. So I stayed awake, hiding under my blanket, my body shaking. I didn't care if I was scared. I wasn't going to answer the whisper again. But at midnight, my phone lit up. A message. Why won't you talk to me? I dropped my phone. My hands were ice cold. The whisper came again. I'm inside now. I couldn't breathe. Slowly, I peeked over my blanket. My room was dark, but I could see something in the corner. A shadow. Watching me. Then it moved. I ran. I didn't care where. I just ran out of my room, down the stairs, out the front door. I ran into the street, screaming for help. My parents woke up and found me outside, shaking and crying. They brought me inside and held me, telling me it was just a nightmare. But I knew it wasn't. Because when I looked back at my bedroom window, the Whispering Man was standing there, smiling. The last night. We moved a week later. My parents said it was because of my bad dreams. They thought a new house would help me feel safe. And for a while it did. The whispering stopped. The shadows were gone. I started sleeping again. But last night, my phone buzzed. A new message. I found you. And then, right next to my ear, I heard a whisper. Can you hear me? Remember, sometimes it's not the monsters under the bed we should fear, it's the ones that walk right through the door.